November sky, Conquest Party, the calm before the storm. Autumn 2025 in Kiev was, as usual, full of life disguised as routine. Cafes in Podil were packed, trams jingled down the streets, and the air smelled of chestnuts and fresh-baked bread. To Dr. Andriy Kovalenko, a 40-year-old astrophysicist at the Institute of Cosmic Research, all of this was just a beautiful but thin layer of paint hiding the cold, mathematical void of the universe. Andriy believed in numbers, not human emotions. His mind was cynical and ruthless, and he considered humanity, with its petty squabbles, to be a temporary glitch in the infinite expanse of space. He wasn't looking for meaning, he was looking for patterns. And he found them. It all began on October 15th. At first, they were just barely noticeable anomalies in the radio band. Not just static, but uniform, complex pulses that repeated with perfect precision. Each pulse had a mathematical structure reminiscent of ancient Fibonacci sequences, but it was far more intricate and multi-layered. This wasn't random, it was deliberate. It was a language that he was likely the only one who could understand. 2 days later, satellites in low orbit began to vanish. Not explosions, not technical failures, but a complete disappearance from radar screens. It was as if they had simply been wiped from existence, leaving no trace. Andriy was one of the first to realize this wasn't solar activity or a network glitch. It was a conscious, planned intervention, and they were not from Earth, the world. Of course, initially refused to believe it. Governments hastily calmed their citizens, the media spoke of unprecedented solar flares, and scientists, as always, were divided into two camps. But Andriy saw the numbers. He saw how the rhythmic signal didn't fade, but only intensified, as if someone was trying to reach out to us. And every day it was getting closer. Andriy spent sleepless nights staring at screens, whose pale light illuminated his exhausted face. He knew he was right. This certainty was a cold, hard stone in his gut. He tried to present his findings at an emergency meeting of the National Space Security Center, but he was dismissed as a fearmonger. Dr. Kovalenko, said the head of the council, Major General Serhiy Melnik, his tone dismissive and condescending. We can't so panic over mathematical music. Our intelligence indicates technical failures. This isn't an invasion, it's a coincidence, but Andriy knew better. He knew this was just an overture. The real show was about to begin. Part 2, the black stones and the first shots. The panic that swept everything away began on October 28th, when the first ship appeared at night over the Sydney skyline. Small but massive, absolutely black, it hung in the air, making no sound, casting a long, eerie shadow over the Opera House. Others appeared after it, and then hundreds all over the world. Andriy watched it from his office, where a live broadcast from Kiev was on the screen. 4 of these black stones hung over the Motherland Monument. They didn't glow, didn't make sounds, they just hung in the sky, absolutely motionless. The silence, that was the most terrifying thing. Not hostility, not explosions, but a complete, striking indifference. It was as if we were no more than ants. To them, they're not responding. Andriy, said Maria, his colleague. She was a little over 30, and unlike him, she still believed in goodness. We tried to contact them on all frequencies. Radio, light, laser ... nothing. What did you expect, Maria? Andrew replied, his eyes glued to the screen. That they would write to us. Hello, we're from another galaxy. This isn't a movie. This is a reality that has no dialogue, but it has consequences. He was exhausted. He slept a few hours a day, working on decoding the signals. He knew that in this silence, something more was hidden. He felt it in the part of his soul he thought was absent. The world's military was mobilized, but no one knew what to do. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't move, doesn't speak, but just exists? On October 29th, during a piloted F-22's attempt to approach one of the ships, the first clash occurred. When the plane was within a 200-meter radius, the black stone released a pulse. Not an explosion, but something much worse, a complete destruction of electronics. The plane simply fell from the sky, leaving nothing behind. It was the first shot. Following this, the U.S., Russia, and China all attempted similar reconnaissance missions. The results were identical. Pilots reported a brief, disorienting flash of light, followed by total system failure. The aircraft would plummet, becoming a metal coffin for its crew. The global stock market crashed, governments declared states of emergency, and the streets, once filled with life, became eerily quiet. The world was holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Part 3. The melody of the stars and the prophecy. Over the next few days, panic gave way to an exhausted, desperate silence. People got used to living under the black shadows. The military stood ready, but no one knew what to do. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't move, doesn't speak, but just exists? Andrew sat in his office, looking at a screen where radio signals were displayed. He noticed that the signals were changing not randomly, but in sync with the pulsations of distant stars. A crazy idea came to his mind. He began to model the signals not as a language, but as ... music, mathematical, cosmic music. He was a genius. And in his madness, there was always a part of the truth. He spent several sleepless nights, forgetting about food, water, and sleep. He saw only numbers, notes, the melody of the universe. And in the end, he found it one small note that didn't fit into the overall melody. It was shifted as if someone had intentionally changed it to make it noticeable. He isolated it, cleaned it of noise, and discovered another hidden signal within it. Not a call, not a message, it was a prophecy. A prophecy about something that would arrive after them. Maria. He shouted, his voice hoarse, but filled with a power he had never felt before. Maria, I found it. She ran into the office, her face worried. What is it, Andrew? Did you find something? Yes, I found the truth. They are not enemies. They are not going to attack. They are ... harbingers. They came to warn us. He showed her the screen where a complex mathematical formula was displayed. This signal is not a language. It is coordinates. Coordinates of the place from where the real threat will come. He looked at her, his eyes wide with the horror of his discovery. These ships, the black stones, they are not the enemy. They are guardians sending a message. They're trying to tell us to get ready for something else, something much worse, Andri. And Maria saw in the hidden signal not only coordinates, but also a visual prophecy. Before them on the screen, a terrifying picture appeared, a huge, monstrous fleet advancing from the depths of space. Their ships were not black and elegant, but ugly and aggressive. Their surface was dotted with thorns and metal growths. Their only purpose was destruction, and at that moment, Henry realized that his prophecy brought not hope, but even greater despair. Part 4. The last note Henry runs to the Central Command Post, where all the military and political leaders gathered. The room was tense, full of oppressive silence. Everyone was waiting for the command to destroy. Listen to me. Andri shouts, his voice echoing off the walls. They are not enemies. I decoded their signals. They came to warn. US. But no one listened to him. For them, he was just a scientist who had gone mad. They saw only silence, only a hostile force. Major General Melnick, who stood in the center of the room, looked at Andri with disgust. Enough, Doctor. Your time is up. We can't let your fear spread any further, and at that moment, a second fleet of ships appeared. They were much larger, brighter, and they did not glow with a soft green light, as Andri thought, but absorbed everything around them. Their shell was made of a material that distorted light. The first ships, the Harbinger ships, flared up like dying stars. They were destroyed in seconds, leaving no trace. It was a signal that they came to destroy. Andri felt a tear roll down his cheek. He was right. It was a warning about those who would come after them. He knew that time had run out. And humanity, consumed by its own fears, lost its only chance. Part 5. The Silent Conquest Second Fleet, which Andri had dubbed the Conquerors in his frantic notes, did not wait. They did not hover silently like the Harbingers. They moved with a predatory grace, descending into the atmosphere. Their ships were not a uniform black, but a chthonic, shifting gray, their surfaces like jagged rock formations from a nightmare. From each ship, a beam of black light, a vortex of distorted reality, lanced down to the surface. It was not a weapon of destruction, not in the traditional sense. The beams targeted every power grid, every communication network, every satellite dish. In seconds, the entire planet was plunged into a technological dark age. Cities went black. The hum of electricity died. The internet, the lifeblood of modern society, ceased to exist. Global communications stopped instantly. Planes fell from the sky, their navigation systems fried, hospitals lost power. The world, once a network of interconnected systems, became millions of isolated islands of terrified people. The invaders weren't here to bomb us into submission. They were here to disconnect us from ourselves. Andriy and Maria were still at the command center when the power went out. The emergency lights flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. The screens, once filled with data and live feeds, were now just black glass. The room was filled with the sounds of cursing and the terrified whispers of the staff. My God, what did they do? Maria whispered, her voice trembling. They cut us off, Andri said, his voice flat. He pointed to the window. Look, in the sky. The remaining Harbinger ships were glowing a faint, ethereal green. They were still there, but now they seemed helpless, like candles in the wind. The Conqueror's ships, meanwhile, pulsed with a malevolent gray light, their beams now sweeping across the continents, ensuring no hidden power source, no backup generator was left intact. Major General Melnick, his face a mask of furious desperation, finally looked at Andrei. You said they were a warning. What were they warning us about? Andrei looked at him, his expression a mix of pity and grim resolve. They were warning us about what happens when you silence a messenger. Part VI, the echo of the Harbinger's conquerors landed. They didn't land in capitals or military bases. They landed in remote, uninhabited areas, their ships carving deep trenches into the earth. Out of them came not an army, but machines. Spindly, insect-like drones that began to spread across the globe. They didn't attack people, they simply ignored them. Their purpose seemed to be resource gathering. They would find veins of rare metals, minerals, and then, with a strange, high-pitched hum, they would simply vaporize them, collecting the essence into glowing spheres they carried back to their ships. Humanity was not the enemy, we were an inconvenient but ultimately ignorable presence on a planet they were harvesting. Andrei and Maria, along with a few remaining scientists, found themselves in a new reality. They were in a small, isolated bunker with a single, battered emergency radio that could barely pick up static. All their equipment was useless, but Andrei had an idea. He remembered the mathematical pulse, the cosmic music. He knew the Harbingers. Ships weren't just a signal, they were a technological key. The Harbingers' ships, he said to Maria, sketching a complex diagram on a piece of paper. Their power source, their core. It wasn't destroyed, it was contained. The Conqueror's weapons couldn't destroy their unique energy signature. It's still out there, an echo, a ghost in the machine. Their plan was desperate. They had a small, portable power source, an outdated prototype Andrei had been tinkering with, and they had the coordinates of one of the Harbinger ships that had been vaporized over a remote part of the Carpathian Mountains. They were going to the mountains, hoping to find a fragment, a residual energy field, anything that could help them. Their mission was no longer to save the world, but to understand what the Harbingers had been trying to tell them. The journey was a brutal ordeal. With no working vehicles, they had to walk. The world outside the bunker was a desolate, terrifying place. Without electricity, the nights were black and silent, the days filled with a strange, unnatural light from the Conqueror's ships. They saw the spindly drones working in the distance, their grotesque forms a constant reminder of their new reality. They saw the terror in the eyes of the few people they encountered, people who had lost everything and were now just trying to survive. Part 7. The final stand in Kyiv. They finally reached the mountains. They found a crater, a massive, scorched wound in the earth. At its center, there was a strange, shimmering field of energy. It was the echo Andrei had predicted. He and Maria set up their equipment, carefully trying to tap into the energy. It was a dangerous process. The field was unstable, and a single mistake could vaporize them. As Andrei worked, the cosmic music returned to him. It wasn't just a prophecy now. It was a torrent of information. He saw the Harbinger's world, a peaceful, technological utopia, and he saw the arrival of the Conquerors, a parasitic civilization that fed on technology and life itself. The Harbingers, unable to defeat them, had fled, their last act to send out a warning, a cosmic scream to any civilization advanced enough to hear it. The black stones over Earth were the first line of this warning. The Conquerors, however, had followed them using their technological pulses to track their trail. They'd been waiting in the shadows of space, waiting for the Harbingers to find a new world to warn, and then swooping in to harvest it, Andri realized with a chilling clarity the Harbingers had led the Conquerors directly to us. Just as Andri connected his device, a Conqueror ship appeared overhead. It was one of the larger ones, a grotesque, bulbous thing, its shell covered in thorns and pulsing with a malevolent light. It had detected their energy signature, and from it, a single, spindly drone descended, not to harvest, but to neutralize the threat. "We have to send the message," Andri said, his voice firm. "We have to use the rest of the Harbinger's energy. It's our only chance." "What message, Andri?" Maria asked, her hands shaking. The Harbinger's message didn't work. "The Conquerors found them." "No," Andri said, a grim smile on his face. "We're not sending their message, we're sending a new one." A scream of defiance. "We'll use the rest of this energy to send a pulse, not as a warning, but as a challenge. A signal that says, we are here. We are not silent. And we will not be conquered without a fight." The drone landed, its metallic legs clicking on the scorched earth. Andri looked at Maria, his eyes full of the same fierce light he had seen in her on that first day. He pushed a button on his device. The last vestiges of the Harbinger ship's energy flared, not in a gentle green, but in a blinding, brilliant white. It was a final act of rebellion, a last defiant shout into the silent void. The drone, caught in the blast, simply disintegrated. The Conqueror's ship above, however, began to move. It wasn't leaving. It was preparing its own, more powerful pulse. Andri knew they had only bought themselves a few seconds. Andri and Maria stood in the center of the crater, a man who had lost his faith in humanity and a woman who had never stopped believing, united in their final, desperate act. They had sent their message, a final, beautiful note in the cosmic music. What it would bring, they didn't know, but for the first time since the invasion began, Andri felt a sense of hope, not in salvation, but in the courage of a species that had refused to go quietly into the night. Final, Andri and Maria stand by the window of the bunker, now just a hollow shell. They watch as the Conqueror's ships descend, their lights pulsing with a triumphant, devouring energy. The air is filled with a low hum, the sound of a silent conquest. The stars, once a source of wonder, are now a battlefield, and the only song they play is a funeral song for a world that had deafened its own ears to the warning. Andri looks out the window. His heart is an empty echo in a universe that has become much colder, but for the first time he doesn't feel despair. He feels an ember of defiance, a small, stubborn spark that he had sent out into the darkness. The Conquerors were here to stay, but Andri's message was also out there, and somewhere in the vast cold of space, perhaps someone or something was listening.